We submitted an
Oh, it was
application for
wrong. I'm
several
sorry.
properties in the village on East Main Street. We were only awarded funding for one of those groups of properties.
And which one was that?
Those were the properties from 24 East Main through 40 East Main.
That's the Bowman operation.
The former Ballman. Okay, so that's the only properties we were awarded funding from the state for those properties.
Yeah, I have a shop in 24, so I was wondering if
Right.
that was one of the buildings.
Yes.
How much?
How much money was awarded? $500,000 was awarded for those properties.
And it comes from where?
That comes from Empire State Development. Okay? And that's reimbursed, it's only on a reimbursement basis. So the money has to get spent first, and then the owner gets reimbursed. So one lump sum. So it's a full outlay of the development monies, and then it's a reimbursement.
How long does he have to finish his project with that money?
He has 2 years from April, but his project timeline that he submitted was December of this year. So that's a separate program. That funding has already been awarded. What this particular program is about, this is called the New York Main Street Program. It's actually funded by a separate entity. It's called the Housing and Community Renewal. Okay? And basically it's for financial and technical resources for the revitalization of properties in traditional downtowns and neighborhoods. Okay? So there's some subcategories to this program, and the goal is to stimulate reinvestment in those historic areas and those mixed-use areas. It's a competitive program. The state requires, as part of this program, that we have to submit a target area. So we, typically how this works is we will identify a target area of, and it has to be very tight. It can't be the entire village. It couldn't be the entire business improvement district. Couldn't be the entire downtown area. It would have to be portions of it, maybe a block, maybe 2 blocks at most. And then from there, within that defined area, we would identify business owners that are willing to reinvest in their properties. Okay? And then with that reinvestment, they provide funding commitments that they're willing to make. And those funding commitments are it's hard and fast. Like, you need to have a bank letter. You need to show that you have the money available. You need to show that you have a bank willing to provide you a loan, or you have cash available to fund those improvements. And then it's another reimbursement program where it's funded by the property owner or business owner, and then gets reimbursed. Okay. But like all other state funding, there's some hiccups to it, and I'll go over those a little bit. There's a bunch of red tape. So it's not quite as simple and straightforward as anybody would like. It's never just, oh, I do the work, and then someone hands me a check. So not-for-profits and units of local government are the only ones who can apply. So this would be an application by the village of Webster. You have to provide bids. You have to go out to bid and provide 2 bids for the project. You have to conduct lead an assessment for lead and asbestos and any other sort of contamination, and then provide an abatement schedule if you actually do find something. You have to meet state-required minority, disadvantaged, and women-owned business enterprise requirements, which could be up to 30% of the funding would be required to be spent or provided to contractors that meet that qualification. And then you have to maintain that asset and own it for 5 years, 5 consecutive years thereafter. You can't just use this to flip it. This program doesn't work that way. So we haven't established a district yet. We don't really know. That's part of this meeting, is to understand where are people interested. What business owners have the greatest interest, and then from there maybe we can dial in a small defined target area. So the target areas are specific, very specific. Experience sustained physical deterioration, and in which the biggest one is in which more than 50% of the resident incomes do not exceed 90% of the area median income. And for us, in the past, that has only been the side of the street on the north side of East Main in that quadrant to date has been the one that has met that qualification. What we can do is we can apply and request that areas on the south side of the street, because it just has to do with census tracts, and that's where they get the data from. They don't really think of the village as a contiguous neighborhood, because the difference in incomes of the people that live on the north side of the street and the south side of the street, I think we can all agree that they're not gonna be different. But in the end, that's the dividing line that they automatically determine, so we would have to then ask them to modify that line. And then these are the eligible activities: technical assistance. If someone has a big building and they're looking for more information on what sort of project they can entertain or complete in the future, we could actually ask for technical assistance money where it would just be for a feasibility study. It'd be a $20,000 max feasibility study to bring in an architect or an engineer, interior designer, whatever that ended up being. Determine what's going on with the building and then come up with some concepts and cost estimates that would help you in the future. So that's technical assistance. And then building renovations are interior renovations for commercial and residential units, exterior renovations for storefronts and facades. Okay. Downtown anchor is for, like one major project, one major building, and we have an either or. So we can't apply for technical assistance and building renovations and downtown anchor. The eligible activities there's 4 to choose from, and our application can only be one of those. So it could be a group of building renovations, it could be one downtown anchor, it could be one technical assistance application, and then downtown stabilization is for properties that maybe have some environmental concerns. Let's say there's a former gas station that needed to be explored and we didn't know what the environmental conditions were. This is the kind of money that you could apply for and utilize for that. So technical assistance, like I said, $20,000 per municipality. Architectural analysis, condition assessment, drawings, funding strategies, cost estimates. That would be for one building. Building renovation, matching grants, up to $50,000 per building for the commercial aspects of it, and then an additional $25,000 per residential unit. So, and you would be able to apply for $25,000 per residential unit, up to 4 units in one building, for a total of $100,000 for that building, is what you could get for a building renovation project. They will not fund greater than 75% of the total project cost, so the total project would have to be in the range of 135,000, 140,000. You could apply for 100 to get reimbursed. And then that does include soft costs, which is good. So your architects and engineers and all those soft costs can actually be reimbursed for, up to a total of 18% of whatever you're requesting from the state. Downtown anchor, that's for one major project that can receive funding anywhere from $100,000 to $500,000 for a single site and a single project. Same funding requirements, 75% max, up to 18% soft cost. Downtown stabilization, it may not exceed 75% of the cost, but a lot of this is actually could be very much soft cost, so they don't actually put a hard cap on that number. So the application process, the scoring criteria, very important. So when we put together an application on behalf of the village, the vision and strategies put forth by the Finger Lakes Regional Economic Development Council, which is the governing agency, the governing body that will essentially select the winning application. They have a set of strategies in this huge document that they put forth to the state every year that talks about what's important in the Finger Lakes region, what are our funding priorities. So 20 points is just whether or not we can put together an application that we can tie to that vision and strategy that the region is establishing. So it's really just, can we write a really good application? Can we display that we really need the funding? Are the buildings in poor shape? Is the economy such that without the state assistance, we really can't get over a funding gap? If the buildings need too much money, yet the market will only sustain $10 a square foot, but we really need 15 in order to make the pro forma work because we got to put way too much money in, then we can make that argument. Impact, only 10 points. So what's the impact of those improvements on the economy? and on the community. Leveraging and financing is 20 points. So do you have your financing in place? Is it good money? Is it hard money? Do you have cash involved? And then the ability and capacity to implement. So in other words, is the project ready to go? And do you have the resources, in other words, maybe a contractor on board or the experience to actually pull it off? And that's the biggest key is how, I mean, 60 of the 80 points are just in your financing and your ability to pull it off in a timely fashion. More than half the points are essentially on your ability to actually conduct the work. Well, not as nearly as much as do you really need it, just as much as can you actually do what you say you're going to do, and can you do it within a short period of time. So the funding priorities are those ready to go or shovel-ready projects. Those are the priorities. You need to have your ducks in a row. That's why you're going to have your cost estimates ready. And there's time for those to be developed. We do have a series of weeks here. Applications would be due in July, at the end of July. So there's time to get all those costs identified, as well as financing. Maybe not approved, but at least maybe get some level of funding commitment from a financial institution to help you with this project. Comprehensive approach, residential, commercial sectors, they love to see mixed-use areas. They love to see are we doing a mixture of commercial buildings and then, commercial buildings that have residential units attached to them or upper story residential units. It's very important to the people that score these applications. Contiguous buildings is important, at least within a very small defined area. So, we hopscotch, all around the bid district and the downtown district. It's unlikely we're going to be selected for funding. And we've done that in the past on 2 other occasions. We've already submitted applications, based on owner interest, and we've done here, there, and everywhere, and we've done our best to say, oh, well, we're tying it all together. This makes sense with this, and this is the corridor, and they all link together. And the state saw right through it. They just decided it wasn't enough of an interesting project for them. And then obviously a demonstration of broad local support. So can you demonstrate that project or these projects or this project area has the support of even the local government, maybe the business improvement district, and is there enough ownership within that area willing to say, I have an investment that I want to make in my building, and I'm willing to commit to make that investment. So the fine print. So prior to the commitment, okay, all the environmental review process needs to be done, which includes reviews for site contamination, lead-based paint, asbestos-containing materials. So the thing that is tricky is you need to do the assessments, and then if any of these materials are found, you have to hire the appropriate contractor to abate the work and do it according to state requirements. And everybody knows it's expensive, and that could eat up a lot of your budget limit, because there isn't an additional budget. There isn't, if you have $100,000 for your building, if 50,000 of it's lead abatement, that's what it is, unfortunately. It's, so you can only apply for, get reimbursed for the aggregate number. They don't pull out the site contamination, the lead-based paint, and the asbestos-containing materials in a separate component, unlike other funding programs in the state where they do allow you some leeway in that regard. So funding commitments. So the way the project works, if the village was to apply for funding and be awarded funding, the village would enter into a contract with the state within this target area, and then this village would then enter into contracts with individual property owners. Those individual property owners would make their funding commitments to say, we're going to fund this project, here's what we're going to do, X, Y, and Z, here's our scope of work, here's our schedule, and then they would submit to having inspections done on their property, okay? And then once the inspections are completed and the work is completed and the inspections are completed and it matches what was committed to in the contract with the village, then the village would submit for reimbursement from the state. State would give a check to the village would then give a check to the property owner. Okay? But all those funding commitments need to be in place before any of these contracts can take place. So you would need to basically commit to that funding early on in the process, not at the application stage by any means. This is just a level of interest at this stage. But if, once the village was awarded funding, you would then need to make a hard and fast commitment. Yes or no, I want to participate. Procurement and bidding, so obviously the 2 bids, good faith efforts to meet all the MWBE requirements. And then the regulatory term, you have to hold it for a minimum of 5 years, keep it in good standing, establish your property filing, property maintenance declaration with money. Okay. So at this point, what I'm asking for is if there is property owners that have an interest in exploring this, is that you provide me a letter of interest by June 1. Okay? And that letter of interest should include, here's my property, here's what I plan on doing, here's the approximate, ballpark range, it's 25,000 or 50,000, or it's up to 50,000 or up to 75,000, here's what I want to do. And then from there, I would work with you to dial that in. I'd work with you one-on-one personally to figure out, can we make a really good project out of this, something that the state would find interesting and fundable, okay? Which would include you having to do some homework, getting cost estimates, getting funding commitments from financial institutions or your own financing. Therefore, we'd have 30 days to pull all that together. So by July 2nd, I'm going to require that all the information from property owners comes into me for people who are interested in participating. So that I have sufficient time to put the application together by July 27th. Because in the meantime, between July 2nd and July 27th, there's going to be a lot of holes that need to be filled, a lot of questions that I would go back and forth, and we'd still be working together on that. Okay? So that's the grant program that is available right now. The application is due July 27th. So I'll take any questions, and go right ahead, Charlie.
Simple question, I'm just a simple layman, so I don't understand all this. If I own the south side of Main Street East, okay, which is an urban blight as far as I'm concerned, and it's been empty for a long, long time, and I came to you and said, I need $100,000 to put new storefronts in, could I get it?
So the way this works is we put together the best application we can to the state to ask for money. Charlie wants to spend $100,000 over here. Peter wants to spend $50,000 over here. Fritz wants to spend $75,000 over here. Mike wants to spend $100,000 over here. We have $400,000 that we're going to request in total across 4 properties. We're going to do our best to put together that application, make it sound like it's the best, greatest things in sliced bread, so that they will award us funding to conduct those projects.
Well,
Okay.
no, the
So right
question
now-
I had was, I'm sorry, man, the question I had was this. If I owned this building, and I haven't spent a dime on it since I've owned it, and I've let it go into disarray, which it is, I hope the guy that owns it isn't here, but I don't really care. I walk by it every day, because I walk, every morning I walk. And I mean, it looks terrible. I mean, it really is. I would like to see it fixed up, don't misunderstand me, like they're doing on the north side, okay? Again, you know where I'm coming from here? I mean, really, if you walk Main Street, it's in pretty good shape. A lot of empty stores, but it's still in pretty good shape. My question is my tax money gonna go to this person that owns that building, that doesn't do anything with it, to allow them to come up with whatever figure they say, oh, I need $100,000 to renovate. I'm gonna give them, as a taxpayer, $100,000 to put into their building, which, to me, I have a little problem with that myself. I mean, because
Right.
what I'm saying.
So that goes back to, in the end, that goes back to the demonstration of broad local support. If in the end there isn't enough support for that particular property owner to be a part of this and get, and be included in the
I mean,
application?
I'd like to see it renovated,
You know what
don't
I'm
misunderstand me. You've got the old bank right next door, which is beautiful, but then from there east, it's not beautiful.
Right, so what you're giving me a philosophical
Oh, yes, I am.
issue. I'm just here to see if we can apply and get funding to improve the community.
Okay.
So whether or not, I'm not here to pass judgment on anybody that hasn't put money into their building or those who have, although any of you who have, thank you very much for reinvesting in your community. But I'm gonna stay away from the philosophical point.
No,
But
that's
in the end,
fine.
the broad local support would be important.
Well, the person that owns it would have to show you what they intend to do with it.
They would have to commit to it.
Right, I mean, there has to be a commitment that they're going to do it. They're not just gonna take their money and run, which is a common thing.
No, there is, and that's just part of the project, is part of the process. The money gets spent, and then, once the money gets spent, and if you said you did what you were going to do with money, then you can get reimbursed for a portion.
Okay. Now, this is basically involves Main Street only. Am I correct?
No,
Good. Tell me what else it contains.
it's just the misnomer of the language. And basically, we're looking for projects that would be within the business improvement district.
Well, it's just like wherever Mike is, right behind me here. You mentioned Mike. Now, Mike's on North Avenue. Not that I'm trying to pinpoint him, but I happen to know the guy and like him, but that's beside the point. But I mean, he's on North Avenue.
Samples.
Right? But he can't apply for this.
Anybody with it, we're looking to put forth a project that would be within the business improvement district. So North Avenue included, or whatever that small portion of South Avenue would be. Okay. But that project, like I said, needs to have a defined and established target area. So the target area can't be the entire business improvement district. So we can't do it, so we cannot put forth an application that would be successful if we picked one property on East Main, one property on North Avenue, and one property on West Main. It would be unsuccessful, because we've done it in the past. And we've gotten the feedback that said, your properties aren't contiguous, we're not interested in this kind of program. So if someone on North Avenue wanted to submit and there was a group of property owners, they were all smack dab together, and they all wanted to get together and say, the three of us are willing to do this, and we're gonna, not really coordinated, but in the end, I'm willing to do this, we're willing to do this, we want our area to be selected for the application. That'd be a great thing. It doesn't matter if the roadway says Main Street on it, it could be North Avenue.
Okay. The reason I'm asking, and again, I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, but everything you see says Main Street Development, Main Street. Well, I'm not on Main Street.
Right.
I'm not even close to Main Street, but I am definitely in bid.
Yeah.
Okay, so, that's my question, and you gave me a answer, hypothetical.
It's not hypothetical, it's true.
I better hurry up.
Anybody within the bid.
Yeah, I came here, no offense, to hear all the details on the grant that was awarded to Charlie and Simmons. And it's not, is it public disclosure, or is it something we can't talk about?
It's something we can't talk about, but it's not the
Can
purpose.
or can't?
We can, but it's not the purpose of this meeting.
Oh, okay, then, I came here for that purpose. Okay, so,
I can have a discussion with you about that,
okay,
and I'd be happy to, but it's not the purpose of this meeting.
all right, that's not this meeting.
Correct.
This is to try to get another grant.
Just try to get more money.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, in light of that, and I kind of glossed, I phased out on a lot of the details, but I'm familiar with a lot of innovation redos, reworks with towns and so forth. Is this new grant? Does it ask for the business plan of the business
Yeah.
that's in the building, and what the revenue is, and what the projected revenue is, and what the projected earnings would be, if in fact the improvement would take place?
Yeah. That's the best way to strengthen your application.
That's what I've seen. So, be it that these are mostly, well, they're probably all private business. And I think the SEC says something like, you gotta be over $1 billion before you go public on your earnings, even if you're private. How do you get that into the public disclosure so that the public can see exactly what the projected improvement would be and what the person or the building owner is saying, these are my revenues, now these are my earnings. If I put this money, if I take this money from the government, my projected revenue will be such and so forth. I've seen this all over the country, but I'm not hearing any of that in these proceedings. And in fact, I know that the purpose of this meeting is not the first
Right.
grant, but I would have liked to seen the business plan if it was public disclosure.
Right, no, and that's, what you're referring to for the prior application is a different funding source, it's a different funding agency.
Correct.
That plays under different rules.
Yes.
Empire State Development
Would require that.
requires it, but also permits that to be maintained in a private capacity.
But but there is an extent to which they make that public disclosure though.
Potentially.
Like there's a company in Albany, north of Albany right now, and they make fuel cells for all the, the pallet trucks for Amazon fulfillment centers. And they started with a somewhat of a public disclosure on where their projected revenues would be.
Right.
And that was before they went public.
Right. So now,
I think that's a great model.
so, I'm not an emissary of the state. How the state runs their programs and what information they choose to make public and not is their discretion. I am here, my organization is the Webster Economic Development Alliance. It's just a public-private partnership that works on behalf of the town and village to get grant funds for the community. So how that public information is disseminated is to the discretion of the state.
I'm not going off onto that tangent. I just think that, as you agree to, it's so central, so tantamount, that information gets out to get public consensus and support to do these things. And that may help you with this.
Potentially. I see your angle, but I could also see a different angle. I can see both sides of the coin.
Let's talk, because I'd like to see your angle.
Well, yeah. Any other questions about the New York Main Street grant program?
Yeah, just a quick question. Judy, Lancy, and I went to Albany for a preservation conference about 2 weeks ago, and they talked about this in one of the seminars. And I was wondering, in your experience, from what you've read, does it help to, because they weren't sure about this, does it help to start with a smaller scale? And initially, they said that oftentimes New York State will award the same community grant, this grant multiple years at a time. But is it better to start off with, say, the technical assistance proposal first, and then move through it the next couple of years to reapply for a larger and larger?
So the last time that we applied for funding and we were denied, we were encouraged to have our next application be a technical assistance grant for one project.
So they did say that?
Yes.
Okay. Is that what you would favor at this point, or what's your opinion?
I'm trying to, at this point, I'm just trying to gather as much information, because from when we applied last 2 years ago, the investment abilities or interest of all the property owners may have changed, right? There may be someone who's really decided that I've been saving up for the past 2 years and this is what I want to do.
Mhm.
And if that's the case, and I think we can put together, get a winning application, I'll be very supportive of trying to assist those people.
Okay.
If in the end we don't find something, maybe we could identify a technical assistance project, potentially, let's say, for the Harmony House.
Right,
To get that project off the ground, which is something that we've been trying to do,
right.
okay?
You know
So,
where exactly I was going.
I knew where you were going.
Okay.
But as of right now, as the person putting together the application on behalf of the village, no decisions have been made whatsoever about what our direction here is.
Okay.
And whether or not we even apply.
Okay.
We're just trying to gather interest. Okay. So if there's no more questions about that, I only want to spend about, 30 minutes. The next component of the meeting, maybe some of you are here for that or not. It's really just a more informal discussion regarding the improvements on North Avenue. The contractor has been selected, the contractor has staked out improvements. Jake Swingley's here as well. And right now, we are trying to open up a dialogue with business owners on North Avenue about the impacts that are gonna have to access during the construction period. So when sidewalks are being excavated, they're being formed, the concrete's being poured, driveways are gonna be closed for potentially a period of days. We're trying to determine, is there some driveways that can be closed? Which driveways would need to be maintained open at all costs with a steel plate over them? Is there any way we could coordinate access and maybe share access and parking across, the North Avenue corridor? So really, this is just for people to look over the plans and kind of talk about what those opportunities would be. I mean, right now, I live on Park Avenue, and I'm experiencing it right now. I can't get in my driveway. I mean, for me, it's my house. It's not my business. I can afford to park down the street and walk a little bit. But for someone who has a business, that's a different story, because that could mean lost sales. So we're trying to be as sensitive to that as we can along the corridor, and we're opening up the dialogue now, before construction starts, to make sure that we can alleviate any issues that may arise. Okay?
How long a period of time do you think it's gonna take to do this?
I'm not sure do you know the overall schedule? I know that they want to start down on the north end.
They got an excavator parked there now, so they're gonna probably start tomorrow.
They want to start on the north end and work their way south, knowing that gives us even some additional time to help coordinate any access issues. The big problem really is the segment from 104 to 404 there on North Avenue. That's the real segment that is going to have the biggest impacts with all those driveways. And then how do we likely won't be able to keep them all open. And that's really the question, is how can we time it? How can we coordinate access? So.
I think it's really about a 3-month time frame with 3 phases, but, 2 are gonna occur consecutively here. So the electric that's going in, they're gonna start that tomorrow. They started laying some things out today. Then sidewalks will follow that up, and some of the other improvements. And while they're doing the electric and the sidewalks, they might set the pole bases and everything. And while they're waiting for that, they're gonna say gateway feature. It's gonna be on North Avenue on the southeast corner. If you get off the expressway at 250 from, going east to the gateway there, a pavilion and a sign, and a lot of landscaping in there. That's gonna kind of take place on its own, once that gets started. So the biggest impact is obviously going to be the sidewalks. The electric trench will probably go by, run the trench by, and then open up pretty relatively fast afterwards. There's not concerns about driving over it right away, but there will be, obviously with the sidewalks. There'll be a period where there might be no access for a week. So if there's areas, and then even longer for big truck traffic, we'd like to keep big truck traffic off it for even longer than that. So if there's specific things that we can find out and coordinate, hey, I get a delivery of something once a month, let's figure out when that is.
Right.
So we can kind of work that into their schedule so they can make an informed decision about what they're doing. Obviously, we're gonna have to provide access to everybody, but like near Mike's business, there's I think 3 driveways, or 2 at least, real
Well-
close together. There might be an opportunity to share a driveway and have one plate
Yeah,
there.
I mean, because I got Brian and then the vet. Yeah, we can probably, I'm sure, well, there's no way to get between the vet and the neighbor. But,
And that's really what we were trying to get at.
but
Is
yeah,
there any way
between
that
me
we
and the
can-
vet, we can share an entrance.
Right,
That's not a problem,
You know-
because our driveways connect.
right.
Yeah, and I think there's a similar opportunity up near 45 North Ave, 27, I still call it the vitamin store. That's where Rob is now.
Yeah,
I guess I've been there a while.
yeah.
The dry cleaners, and those buildings there, and the.
Oh, yeah, that's all connected back in there.
Yeah, so we could have one entrance
Yeah.
there and coordinate it out, and just make sure everybody's, I don't want to assume everybody always likes each other, but, so I make sure that we have those discussions, if there's issues like that, that we, say, oh, yeah, you can use this, and I say, that guy's a jerk, who never cuts his tree, who does this or that, and find out that there's an issue later, so we'd rather, I guess, find out now.
Yeah, I could even probably include Heather at the acupuncture. I mean, I can offer up my part, if we could stop it at, say, Brian's, and then you can do all that work from my, physical therapist all the way up. As long as you can get into his, then I would service him, the vet, me, and I can have Heather park in, come into my parking lot.
It's a challenge here too, is a lot of the medical buildings or dental buildings, dentist offices,
Right.
they're scheduling people 6 months out, and to try to, change everybody, or tell them, hey, get around going from this way or going from that way, more notice that we have, either better, or, make sure that we find those things out, so.
Yeah. We're gonna have any kind of notice on when you're just putting the plan together now, or is it already in the works? As far as when they're gonna do?
Yeah, they're planning on the electric taking essentially a couple weeks, running electric and all the conduit and the bases and all those things. And after that, starting with the sidewalks. So that's one of the reasons, and Matt said you were getting together tonight for the other things we had talked about getting together and seeing if there's, any specific concerns. Now, more than likely, it's gonna be the people that aren't here that'll have the concerns.
Right.
This seems to be the way it always works, but if you're talking to your neighbors and things like that, maybe mention, hey, this is going through, and then we can try to coordinate it. There should be notice going out when it gets closer to the actual, the major disruption, with the sidewalks and things like that going out. There'll be, there's an engineer in charge, or the inspector, that's one that's doing the construction inspection, has got a point person for questions, concerns like that. And then the contractor themselves are developing or have the schedule, they'll be able to share that information. And typically, if it works just like it did with the state came through, I don't know if you remember, Keeler Construction did this stuff with the state, and a lot of times they went down. Most of the, if the sidewalks they took out when the state did their work are gonna be the ones taken out now, so it'll be different ones, but those people were notified ahead. And they worked on road plates and coordinated with them.
Are they gonna be working on the road to itself, or just the sidewalks?
Just a very little road, there's going to be some curb replacements, and then we can look at the maps up there, some curb replacements, and the biggest change in the roads would be the median. There's going to be a raised median on North Avenue, just south of the expressway.
Right.
Basically, what's striped out there now is going to be a raised median. It's going to be a little spot where people are crossing that big expanse of North Avenue there. They'll be able to have a spot to kind of safe harbor and cut it up instead of one big mad 75-foot or 100-foot dash across the road. All 4 lanes will be able to go across a little bit and make sure they're safe, and then continue the rest of the way.
Jake, will that have any plantings on it, or is it just gonna be concrete?
No, it's going to, in itself, the median's concrete,
Okay.
and then it's gonna have planters on there that we can dress up, but then we'll.
That won't be this year.
What do you mean?
That's gonna be too late. So we're gonna- It is.
No,
It was
yeah.
part of the original plan.
Yeah, no.
Planters and baskets on the light poles will be something that we would deal with for next.
Yeah, well, I have to come out of the budget, I can't speak to that. The bid takes care of planters on Main Street.
Yeah, and then we're gonna get new planners for down there, let's try to coordinate, obviously they're gonna coordinate with what we just got for Main Street, and the posts down there, we kinda got the new light posts that are going there, we're gonna get away from the Cobra heads. At 104, there's still gonna be the Cobra head lights, but we're putting post lights like we have on Main Street. It's very similar to that, but it's an LED, and we're converting the rest of our posts to LED now. And there's also gonna be a more decorative base on them, and we ended up getting a decorative base that's a clamshell that can be applied to it. So once those are in, then we can take and put those bases on the post on Main Street, so there's, the kind of, it's growing both ways, down North Avenue, connecting the north end, north of the expressway, kind of all the way up through the rest of North Avenue, and then up onto Main Street, so it's all one consistent area and consistent kind of theme. I mean, it's why it's a North Ave connector project. It's for pedestrians and for, make sure that that's, visually, and it gives you the feeling that it's all part of that one district, the business district, and North End's not isolated. Even though the expressway kind of cuts it off a bit, we're trying to connect those two back together.
Jake, are they gonna resurface the road itself? I mean, did they just pave that a few years ago?
Yeah, no, this is, a few years ago, they went curb to curb. This is curb to right of way on each
Okay.
side, so it's outside
Because they're all
of
new
that.
curbs, obviously.
Yeah, there's certain areas where there's new curbs, but there are gonna be, down, especially down in your area, there's new curbs across from your place. There's no curb there now. So there's gonna be curb put in there. And that's one area. There's a few different areas where there's curb. I forget, it's about 500 or 600 feet, I think, of curbing altogether. So.
As far as the
Looking
park,
forward to it.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a nice project when it's done.
Yeah, and there's gonna be pain during it, you know, you can't help that, I guess, but, you know, we keep open communication, we can minimize that as much as we can, and, you know, try to work things out, like Mike was talking about different accesses, how people can work together, have one. I figured, you know, the contractor's working for you guys, really, you're the ones, you've been putting the bill, even though we got a big, you know, it's federal money that's going through the state, that's coming to this project, everybody gets it from you, so it's your money, they're working for you guys, and, you know, we wanna make it, have them do a good job, which I'm pretty confident they're gonna do a nice job on it, but also have them, you know, try to work with them as much as we can to make it as easy, because I figure it's as easy as it can be, it'll be the best job, and it'll turn out better, you know, it's not, rushing through it, there's little things you gotta do with a little more pride. Everybody just likes to do that when they're, you know, they're happy where they're working and things are going good, so.
so yeah, I mean, we would encourage you to reach out to your neighbors and tell us, you know, coordinate
Well,
amongst,
yeah,
talk
they come
amongst
down,
yourselves,
like,
and then we can communicate that
Where,
to the contractor.
where you can bring, you know, you can bring sidewalks up to a certain spot, and then after that, then we could, once they, what do they take, a week, you said, before you can drive over them?
Yeah, typically, what we always aim for is at least 72 hours or 3 days of, before cars go on it. We like to see at least a week. I mean, really, concrete really takes 28 days to fully cure. But we're not gonna ask anybody to wait 28 days, so. But if we can get, you know, people, you know, 3-4 days, keep the cars off of it. It's not saying block your entrance completely for that long, but, you know, obviously at least a day or two, and then we can, plates over, but that's gotta be ramped up so we get up and over without messing up the brand new sidewalks that are there. Then we can do that for car traffic, and then get the plates off, and then get opened up for everything else.
The issue is that there is a balancing act of how much contiguously can they get excavated
Oh,
for
yeah,
the
right,
board,
yeah.
you know, and just so they can be efficient in doing that. And then, or how inefficient, you know, can we have them stop in certain places and then have to, you know, and then, so access can be maintained while this is curing. I think in the end, there's gonna be, it's gonna be a balancing act, right? And that's gonna be it's gonna be a dance on the contractor's part to figure out how he can be efficient, yet keep everybody open and have access.
Yeah, if I can add to that, it's efficiency is certainly a big aspect of it, but it's not just efficiency. Best thing when you're pouring concrete is to have a big monolithic slab that is, you know, doesn't have a lot of joints, doesn't have a lot of breaks in it. So if they can keep an area that they're pouring, it's a lot better product at the end too. I mean, obviously they have to put joints in every once in a while, but, you know, rather than, you know, every other driveway, if they're hopscotching along, that's when you have a tendency for more movement, more breakage, and it's not gonna last as long, so, you know, whatever biggest chunk they can pour is the better, but maybe it's, you know, up to one driveway where, like you and your neighbor share one, maybe they stop, do your neighbors, leave yours.
Yeah,
open,
could
and
you, I
then
mean, if you could
start
start,
again after that.
if they're starting north and coming south, or coming south, they can go from like 104 all the way up to my property, and then we can access through my neighbors. And then they gotta give us, you know, once that's, would they be able to wait a week before they can do the next leg, or?
Yeah, and that's something where if they do that, they might be able to hop across the street, do something
All right,
else. I think
yeah.
they're typically,
Because we can, you know, then we can work that out. If we
Yeah.
can bring it all the way up to me, block mine off, so that I can access my neighbor, and then the next week, we can block him off and you can access your mine.
yeah, and one thing too, where there's gonna be removals, might be that they remove all of it, and then you have a stone bridge
Yeah,
going across until the new one's formed and poured and that.
right.
But you have that stone going across there.
Well, yeah, the removal, you'll still be able to drive over it, it's just
Yeah.
gonna be, yeah,
Yeah, they'll put stone
Right,
in the way to level
it's
it
just the
back up.
pouring of the concrete,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's, I think it'll be great when it's all done.
Yeah, well,
It's
yeah.
getting there.
But, yeah, and I'm sure Brian won't have a problem with it, I can talk to Heather, I'll talk to her, who has the acupuncture on the other side of, the other side of, Marshall, Kelly.
Yes.
She could, if she, I don't know, if she can have her customers use my parking lot for that week, then you can do the whole run up to me.
Yeah, it might be something we could look at even, I'm trying to think of how close they are in the back there, or if there's, I don't think there's a straight shot between you, even if they went across Kelly's property.
She's got it fenced off in the back, so they can't really,
Okay.
unless they could, I don't know who owns that fence between Kelly and Heather. But if they can take that fence off, they can walk,
Yeah.
they can even drive, I don't know, no, they can't. She's got, all kinds of cars and stuff over there. Yeah, I'll talk to her, I'll talk to Heather and see what her plans are.
Yeah, it might be things that are fluid sometimes. When we talked last week with the contractor, with the engineer, we were even contemplating for, 45 and 27, all those places, even trying to access through Kircher Park, see if we could do something there.
Oh, yeah,
And,
yeah.
It was just decided that it's probably best to try to do plates across the driveways there and coordinate, because there's so many close together that they
Right.
could access one.
Yeah.
So anything's, we throw things and see what sticks, and always.
But as far as deliveries go, I mean, right now, I got a couple guys that actually stay park on North Avenue and hand truck it up. They can still do that,
Yeah, we just need to be able to provide them a way to get over it.
across the sidewalk. Yeah, they wouldn't need anything, it's just, they're not driving a vehicle over.
Right.
They're just,
And Charlie, you'll still have access to Railroad Street, so your property should be, they'll close
I
off,
already thought of that, because,
they'll close off North Avenue, but you'll still have Railroad Street to access all of your,
Now, see, who started calling Railroad Street? Officially, it's not Railroad Street.
I don't know, it's on this
Railroad
drawing.
Junction, right?
Railroad Street was across the street when I used to own that side of
It's
the
on
street.
this, it's
So I
on
guess the
this,
name came with me on this side of
it's
it.
on this drawing.
Because it's not really your,
I know,
Is it
it's not a
Railroad
public
Junction?
right of way.
but I'd like to do something about that if you were interested. You could buy it. Okay, I'm just
is
joking.
there any ballpark figure on when they might be doing the sidewalks around that area, Jake, so I can let them know?
I'm sorry.
Any ballpark time frame and when they're gonna be doing the sidewalks? I mean, where does that fit in?
Should be starting in a couple weeks, and we'll have, once they get through with the electric, the electric's gonna take a couple weeks. And then in the meantime, maybe we can try to get, once they're on site more, I think they have a schedule, and they're planning on the sidewalks being about 3 weeks, I think. 3 weeks to a month, but that's obviously, it's weather dependent, it's materials, it's all sorts of dependent, so. But as they're here on site and more familiar, see how other things are going, I think we can develop that schedule.
So you're looking at maybe mid-June for the sidewalks going in?
Yeah, I think, especially if they start up on the north end, north end of it near Orchard, by the time they get through you, I don't think mid-June's too far off. With an asterisk subject to change. So,
Hey Jake, just a side question, is Donovan Street on the schedule to be redone?
Donovan Street is not on the schedule. It is, it's on a burner, but I don't think the burner's turned up really high yet.
All right.
But we started to put away funds for reconstruction just as a reserve, but it's very minimal. In reality, that's gonna be something that, what we wanna do on Donovan Street is take it all the way down to the base, start over, and do something similar, put in new sidewalks down the whole line, put in street lighting the whole line,
Right.
and put in a new base, new drainage, and just to
But
really,
there's some spots in there, that street is bad.
yeah.
Can we get a patch?
Yeah, definitely, yeah, your shimming is gonna go on,
All right.
but it's, as far as, and beyond, it needs so much work that we're band-aiding the Donovan until we get together and do all of Donovan.
Okay.
And then we're using the other funds, one streets we can still say, Donovan's basically, it's shot.
Right.
Some areas, there's only this much asphalt on top of, I don't know what, cinders. I think when their fires were down there, they brushed them into the street and paved over. When you look at, there was some bad spots in there. It is terrible. And then because it's so thin too, and it's a wetter area, the frost every year just destroys it.
Well, if we could just get a patch job, just so people don't
Yeah.
like twist their ankles, 'cause
Yeah.
there's some bad things there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I think we got a bond a few years ago for some paving things that we did.
Yes.
And I think that's
Yep.
nearly paid off, but should be
It's the right way to go.
very close to being paid off. And I think that's kind of the thought is when that's done, redoing it. And we've always had the opportunity before to ask for member items, so we can look for additional funding to do things like that. When you ask, Uncle Cuomo came through and changed the way all that works. And I don't think to the benefit of communities all the time. Sometimes it was something nice you had, you can go ask your representative, saying, hey, here's something, they understood it, they can go see it, they knew what it was. And we can get additional funding that way too, to kind of limit the impact. But maybe that's something good for, could that be, it would be within a 3 continuous block area? That would spur economic development down in Donovan Street.
Unfortunately, roadway work isn't included under that, the program we were just talking about.
And storm work, storm sewer, street lighting, sidewalks.
There are other grants.
So I got a plan to put the
There
sidewalk right in the middle
is a
where the street is now.
streetscape component that could be requested as part of a building project, but it would be for, street furniture and maybe some new sidewalk.
But if we engineer it properly and put the sidewalk right down the middle of the existing road, then we could have split lanes, and then we kind of have to,
I'm sure we could look at it.
we could have to have the road done as part of the new sidewalk, the streetscape.
Quick question, is there, one of the things they talked about was a DEC grant. Jake, is there really stormwater issues down there?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
they talked about, there was a community near south of Buffalo. They applied for, they had some major stormwater problems, and they were able to get the DEC to give them a significant amount of money. Now, it was a 50-50 match, but it was a very large amount of cash that was, pumped into that project. So then maybe that's a possibility. If it's, I don't know the severity of it, but I mean, because I'm not sure about it.
You get a big storm, there's 6-8 inches of water there.
I'm not sure about the engineering, I don't remember what we talked about at the time, but
I'm not
it's-
sure of the particular funding program you're
Okay,
talking about.
but that's, maybe something like that's
That's not
possible.
done.
So,
Okay. Are there any more questions about what's gonna happen on North Avenue or the potential grant application?
So Matt, the grant, so we're gonna you're gonna take applications from who's interested. So then, how do you, because you can't have it all over, like you said, how do you choose which project you wanna look at? If you only get one on the east side of Main Street and one on the west side of Main Street and 6 down north, I don't know how you change, would choose.
And I don't have my own personal scoring metric. I guess what I will do is, I will use, I'm gonna use the scoring system essentially that the state has already determined and run it by,
Right. So
Those
the project
projects.
plan in your eyes.
right.
Right. So Charlie, we gotta do our homework.
And, and obviously, if there's interested pockets throughout, multiple interested pockets, and obviously someone's gonna be disappointed,
Right.
but my goal is to disappoint anybody, my goal is to put forth the best.
Well, whatever comes is welcome.
The blocks, and I can never say this word, but contiguous blocks, the requirement is that if there are areas north and south of 104, is that split the blocks?
They really want the buildings like They would love to have them be in contiguous buildings even.
The road that the state put through that split things up.
It's just the nature of this particular funding
Yeah,
source. They're very high on, the buildings basically, such that, I mean, the goal is, will the impact be visible enough, right, in the aggregate, that it'll actually make a difference, rather than, you know, okay, because the goal isn't to help an individual property owner, unfortunately, that's not the goal of the program. The goal of the program is to spur revitalization in a larger area, and they feel that hopscotching around isn't really gonna do that, but by targeting all that money into one location, that would do that.
yeah, so it's for additional investment.
Additional investment, it's gonna, improve property values, increase rents, that's the goal of the program. Okay.
I don't know if everybody's looked at the.
Yeah, I mean,
plans
that's
that are up there. One area.
As long as you don't close every entrance to the parking lot, they think.
No, I think,
You can't, well, 4 of them somewhere.
they're not starting until about the, building, 46.
As of right now, that pole's staying.
Snowing on it again.
Pardon me?
It's just-
As of right now, this drawing is indicating that that pole is staying.
Sidewalks out to
The
the.
trees,
Boy, you
the
try to
trees
get out
coming.
of there.
area, but then they're kind of.
You can't see up the road. But you can't
Back
take a pole along and just put it away.
Their backhand, so.
Yeah, I mean, moving the poles aren't
It looks like
cheap.
the sidewalk kind of.
So we should get together and see what the only problem
Yeah, I'm trying to think where their curb cut, is this, this is their, here's 103 is Stokes, but their curb cuts, I think, over here, right?
Well, yeah, that was.
She owns both properties.
Yeah. Both those properties. So, and that's, this is me.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, this whole area, there's